Hey, what's up guys? Gons here for the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. As promised, this is another clip from the documentary film Inhuman, The Next and Final Phase of Man is Here. I was the director and editor of the documentary for Tom Horn and Skywatch TV over the summer, and it was a privilege to work on the project, and I was really blown away by some of the things that the pro-transhumanists had to say. But in this clip, I wanted to basically outline how certain Christians respond to this whole thing of human enhancement and relate it back to Genesis 6 and what appears to be an ancient account of a similar thing where humans were being manipulated at the genetic level to enhance or to at least change in a certain way, and the results of that. And this is all too familiar to a lot of folks that are subscribed to this channel and watch this channel, but it does a really good job of explaining it, and it has all the experts and scholars and theologians supporting the view. So in terms of an appeal to authority, this will give you a little bit of insight as to how and why we believe what we believe about Genesis 6 and what went down in the days of Noah. So check this clip out. And again, I hope it encourages you to go to skywatchtv.com and purchase the full-length documentary Inhuman, The Next and Final Phase of Man is Here. It's 3 hours long, and it covers all the materials that it possibly can for a first installment of a documentary that covers transhumanism. So check this out, and I hope you guys have an awesome day. God bless.
An entire historical development from Adam and Eve until the coming of Christ was devoted to redeeming human beings as they are now created. Not remaking them, not recrafting them, retooling or re-engineering, but redeeming human beings. And therefore, God must think that what He created is okay.
Many scholars believe that the transhumanist movement is not mankind's first attempt to alter the pure human bloodline. In the book of Genesis, we are told of an ancient race of fallen angels who interbred with human women, creating offspring called the Nephilim, human-angel hybrids. Because this worldwide breeding program spread to all but one line of humans, God was forced to intervene and destroy the earth in a flood, leaving only Noah's family, who the Bible refers to as perfect in his generations. Some assume that this means perfect adherence to the Mosaic law, but that law did not yet exist in Noah's day, and we are told that no human other than Christ can achieve perfection in the law. Therefore, this theory is incomplete. Many respected scholars believe that this biblical reference speaks of Noah's DNA as being perfect, that he was the last among his generations who remained perfectly human, the last and final pure bloodline, the last DNA that remained unaffected and undefiled by the interbreeding between fallen angel and the daughters of men. But was the flood in the days of Noah also a result of ancient human tampering?
In Genesis chapter 6, we have a huge insight given to us, because it records a time when the angels, some fallen angels, cohabited with human women to create a hybrid offspring called the Nephilim, sometimes translated clumsily in the English Bible as a giant, but they were gigantes, they were earthborn, they were hybrids, if you will. And that was apparently a strategy to contaminate the purity, if you will, of the human line. And that's what led to Noah's flood. Many people have no grasp of why that rather extreme judgment was taken, where all but 8 people, actually all but 9 people, were erased and God started over, so to speak. and that was because it was a gene pool problem introduced by the adversary through his fallen angels. And that isn't just a quaint, quirky Old Testament text. It's confirmed several times in the New Testament, in 2 Peter 2 and Jude and so forth.
They were angels that came down and cohabited with women and had children by women, and who were corrupted replicas of the human race.
If you look at Genesis 6, you'll see the hybridization that was going on then. There was animal DNA within some of the humans. There was angelic DNA within some of the humans. Noah was the only one who was perfect in his generations. He was the only one that did not have DNA that didn't belong there.
When God created the flood of Noah, covered the ground of the earth, drowned every last person, he was drowning non-humans. He was drowning humans, if you will, who had been so corrupted that they were no longer eligible to be saved. And only Noah and his family rode across the floodwaters. Now, getting your mind wrapped around this idea it takes some doing, because you don't like to think about things this dark. But nevertheless, the Bible describes it.
The Holy Bible is not the only record of human hybrids. World cultures across the globe tell similar tales.
Whether you're talking about the ancient Greeks, the ancient whatever, fill in the blank, they all have their legends of the star people that came down, and because they created these hybrids that became prideful, that God, in whatever form they express, had a flood to get rid of them and so forth. Those episodes it's amazing. At least 14 different ancient cultures have been tracked where they have that same essential story as is outlined in Genesis chapter 6.
Every ancient society has its particular host of chimeras, beasts that are half human and half some other kind of beast, like, for example, a centaur, the great Babylonian lion with the head of a man. All of the Egyptian gods were chimeras. They were half human and half something else. And there is very strong evidence that genetic experimentation before the flood created these chimeras. The early church fathers very strongly believed that fallen ones corrupted early man. In other words, this is an idea that they were, of course, a couple of thousand years closer to it than we are today. And the recorded histories spoke a great deal about this particular period before the flood. And the destruction of the great library at Alexandria destroyed literally millions of volumes that by inference were said to tell about that period of history.
Does all this sound fantastic? A rational person might doubt the authenticity of such accounts, no matter how prolific. Is there any evidence to support these claims?
The Bible says not only did fallen angels come down and mate with women before the flood, but it also says in Genesis 6:4 there were giants in the earth in those days, that is before the flood, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And so both before and after the flood, these atrocities were committed upon human beings. And after the flood, we read about a number of different kinds of giants. In fact, I have here reading in Genesis 14 just a short list. In the 14th year of Kedorlaomer, kings that were with him, he smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth Carmaim, the Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh Kiriatim. Well, here are 3 lines of giants that were killed by this man called Kedorlaomer. One line of giants is called Rephaim, another is called Zuzim, another is called Amim. And the Bible is very clear about those 3 lineages of giants. It was his idea that all of those lines of giants should be destroyed. The children of Israel, of course, took one look at them and said, we're like grasshoppers in there, so we can't do this. The fact remains that God wanted them destroyed, and right here in Isaiah 26:14 is the reason. They are dead. They shall not live. They are the Rephaim. They shall not live. In other words, there is no redemption possible for them because they are not human.